So it took me a very long time to realize that being able to afford payments and being able to actually afford the item are two very different things. So whenever I look at a car like this, which is a Lexus IS that costs about $40,000, I ask myself, can I actually afford this car? Or for example, a Audi A3, which costs about $35,000. Or lastly, the Cadillac CT5, which costs about $37,000. If you notice here, these cars are ranging just about $40,000 when you actually put everything into it. And the average person would probably say, Tommy, I can't afford to pay $40,000 in cash for a car like this. And the minute you walk into a car dealership, a lot of car salesmen, they already know this, that the average person doesn't even have $1,000 in the bank account. But what they do have is a stream of income. So whenever they show you these cars, they say, hey, don't worry about the actual car price, worry about the payments. And a lot of car salesmen, they understand this, that the average person, they can't afford to buy a car like this for $40,000 in cash. So they try to focus on one thing, which is basically the payments, instead of the actual thing you're actually buying and how much it actually costs. So they ask you, hey, in a 5-year car payment, can you afford to pay $1,200? The answer is probably going to be no. Or for example, 3 years, the answer is no. So they might say, what about 5 years? Can you afford to pay $754? The answer might be, maybe I can make that work. But what about, for example, 7 years? Which, by the way, it's about 84 months. And the average person would say, hey, yeah, $565 for a $40,000 car per month. The answer is, this is a no-brainer. I can definitely afford those payments, and they usually go ahead and buy it. And that's where people get trapped. And that's why I'm making this video, to tell you exactly why you should avoid this and all the things they basically use to get you to actually go ahead and activate this big wealth killer. So here's the first thing you need to understand to make sure you don't fall for these tricks. The first thing is basically, a lot of people, when they go ahead and they buy these cars, they end up underwater. And in finance, it's a very basic term when it basically means your item, what you actually bought, is worth less than the loan you actually have. And that is super dangerous. Imagine, for example, you buy a house and you borrowed $100,000 and now the house is only worth $50,000. The answer is you are fully underwater. Now, with a house is an asset, it usually goes up in value, but the problem is a car is a liability. I mean, you kind of need it, you use it, but it's not an asset. It doesn't go up in value unless you're spending millions on collectible cars. And the average person, let's be honest, we're not doing that. So overall, you think about it, okay? You buy a car, you're paying, for example, for 84 months, right? 7 years, $500 on average. And in reality, this car value is going down by like around 25% every single year. Now, what that means is if you're only making payments and bringing down the payment amount or the actual loan amount by 12 to 15%, it means in the first year, you're going to be underwater. Second year, underwater. It just gets like deeper and deeper and deeper. And by the time you're actually done paying this loan, what happens is, hey, yeah, you probably have like this massive loan balance you just paid off, but you also have an asset that's actually not worth that much whatsoever. Because in the first 5 years, that car is going to be worth about 50% less. So those cars, they look cool. They look fabulous. But guess what? In 5 years, that $40,000 turns into about $20,000. But guess what? You still had to pay the full $40,000, and let's not talk about interest just yet. Now, number 2, guys, is you can also have trade-in short loans. Now, let me explain this because I just learned this terminology today, but I understood it a long time ago. But there's always some new terms to try to use to get you to actually finesse you in a sense, okay? So again, let's say you have a car, right? And they always offer you some deal. You ever wondered why are car dealerships so willing to give you, for example, free car washes or free oil changes or make tire changes, for example, a lot cheaper and so on? It's because they want to have you come back. They want to create a recurring customer base. They want to have the person that's basically borrowing money and likes cars, they want to have you come back to potentially sell you off on something else. Now, how do you sell somebody a car that already has a car? You sell them a newer car and you get them to trade in their last car. Now, what happens is this, okay? What if, okay, you bought a car like 3 years ago. Now, this car is worth about like, let's say $10,000, probably not, a lot more more obviously, but your loan is like $15,000. That means you're basically negative. You're down. You have negative equity of $5,000, but they want to get you to trade in. So they say, hey, how about this? We give you $10,000 for your car, that's what it's worth, and we just add that extra $5,000 over to your new loan. Now that basically means, again, you create this cycle of negative equity, of buying something in perpetuity that makes absolutely no sense. Now imagine this. If you just grabbed that money and invested it over 84 months, over 20 years, how much money would you have? The answer is a lot. And that's why car payments are so dangerous. And you think about it, right? The average person might switch their cars every 7 years, every 5 years. And every time you're doing this, if you actually have, for example, a negative equity, or you have, for example, a deficit in there, well, whenever you trade in, you're carrying that balance forward and forward and forward. And where does that end? It ends in a massive problem, in a massive headache. And that's not what you want to do. Now, third, guys, is you'll end up paying big money. And I don't just mean, for example, in interest, because the excuse might be, Tommy, they're telling me I get 0% interest, because sometimes that's an offer, but they make money when they actually sell you the car, right? They're not stupid. They're not going to do business to basically lose money. Or you might actually be paying a decent amount of interest of 8%, 5%, 12%, 15%. I've seen car payments or interest rates be super high, and it's actually crazy, and it's almost like predatory, and I actually don't like it. But the answer is, you end up paying so much more money for something that's worth so much less than you initially actually bought it. And that's actually not a big thing, or a big deal, or a good deal, I should say. On top of that, also, there's also opportunity costs. If you had just bought, for example, a good car, affordable, that you can actually afford, and you just invested the difference, you actually would have made more money somewhere else. And that is opportunity costs. When you choose to do something that's actually not better than something else. That is the basic understanding of opportunity costs. And on top of that, you also have, for example, the total price. When you add up the total price of owning this vehicle, which usually might be a lot fancier than you can afford, it usually ends up being a lot more money than you initially thought. Now you might be wondering, Tommy, if all of these are the negatives, if all these are the problems, the answer is they're not all the problems. I'll give you more later on. So overall, you might be wondering, Tommy, well, what's the solution here? What exactly am I supposed to do when I walk into a dealership? The answer is, instead of focusing on the payments, you focus on these two things. The first thing is, can I afford to pay cash for the car? If the answer is no, you don't buy. You can't afford it, that's fine. You can afford something else. Second question is going to be, is this more than half of my annual income? If the answer is yes, you don't buy it because you can't afford it. And it's that simple. That basically means, hey, I make $40,000 a year. Can I afford to actually own a $30,000 car? The answer is no. It's ridiculous. It's like, why are you investing all your money into an asset that's basically going to devalue in the next 5 to 6 years or 7 years? Oh, no, Tommy, this is going to be very reliable. The answer is, there are a lot of used reliable cars out there. One very common rule you want to use when you're buying a car, buy a car you can afford to pay in cash, which is usually going to be used. So make sure the brand you pick is actually a reliable one. Now, you might be wondering, Tommy, well, what is going to be the benefit of me actually following these rules when it comes to actually buying a car? The answer is very simple. It gives you flexibility, it gives you extra cash, and it takes away debt. If you're basically borrowing money for like 84 months in a car, that's money you're basically not investing. That's basically putting your money into something that's basically going to be ruined in the future. If you're compromising yourself by $500 car payment every single month, the answer is that's money that could have been invested. And for example, when you actually buy a car, you pay cash for it, you actually own it, they can't take it away from you if you lose your job. There are no car payments, and that's a very cool thing. So it takes away a lot of stress. It saves you a lot of money, and it allows you to build up more wealth. And I don't know what other reasons I can possibly give you to not go ahead and get yourself into a crazy car loan. Now, there is one thing I know I'm gonna get in the comments. Maybe I might not get it if I made it all through the video, but overall, I know I'm gonna hear, Tommy, if this is a devaluing asset, what's the point of paying cash for it if I just could have grabbed that money and invested it? The answer is, there are things in life that are just a part of life that you're actually going to have to buy. And it's not gonna be, for example, just an interest, or for example, I could have invested the money type of thing. Okay, so the answer is, if you can afford to pay $5,000 for a car or $10,000 for a car, the best thing to do is basically pay cash, because by alleviating the stress, not being in debt, and basically giving you more cash flow, you're able to invest a lot more money, and when times get hard, you're able to continue investing without having to stop. And that gives you a lot of freedom, and that's why I say there's no need to borrow money when it comes to a car. My dream car, it might be that Lexus. I love cars. I like Mercedes. I like nice things. But is it a good idea for me to buy right now? The answer is no, because my overall goal right now is financial freedom. So if you want to be broke, but you don't want to look broke, it's a great idea. Buy a Mercedes, buy a Lexus. And then you're basically, after three months or so, that new car smell wears off. And all you smell is those payments that's basically leaving your wallet every single month, and that's not what you want. But overall, guys, that is it for this video. And if you take anything away from it, is buy used, pay cash, be patient, and don't rush into things. Don't worry about the payments, worry about, can I actually afford it? Make sure it's no more than half of your annual income. Just save up. It's okay to get a hoopty while you save up to get the car you actually want. An 84-month car loan is just a little scam dealerships basically use to get you to buy things you can't afford. I wouldn't be surprised the next few years you have, for example, 10-year car loans. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, and I see that being possible because I see electric cars being a lot more efficient, being able to last a lot longer. And if you have that and it holds up a little bit more value, you could probably justify it and say, hey, this is 10 years, 10 years. It's just $100,000, you know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous, okay, guys? As always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, comment down below. I made it, so I know you made it all the way to the end of the video. And peace out, long-term stream out, more content here, my page is here. As always, peace.